I just finished 12 years in elected office. Each of us is going to introduce ourselves, and if you can, ladies, touch on the catalyst of what made you decide to run. And I'll begin. So I grew up in Jackson. My family has had a long history of small business in the hospitality industry, of which I still do today. Cooked bacon this morning at the inn. And I left like many kids who grew up here, and when I came back and decided to stay, I was asked and encouraged by a family friend to run for town council. And I said, no, I can't do that. I'm too young, I'm too inexperienced. But after a few more times of asking and encouraging, I looked at the council at the time, and what really struck me, or what made me, or pushed me over the edge, was that it needed more representation for women and young people. Melissa was serving at that time, and she was the only woman and the only young person. And so I said, I didn't think anyone was doing a bad job, but I said, we need representation from all of us, and I believe in representative democracy and government, and I put my hat in the ring and decided to do it. So I'm very grateful to have had 3 terms in office, and also very grateful to be a private citizen now. We will go down the line, so we'll start with Melissa, and then just go around.
All right, thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. I am very happy to talk to you about a subject that I'm very passionate about. When I was 29 years old, I looked at the council and commissions similar to Haley, but at that time there were no women serving. There was no one under 50 years old, and all of those men owned their homes. And I didn't feel very represented. And so, of course, I didn't think I could run, so I started asking other people. And it took a number of those conversations before people started asking me to run. And similar to Haley, I didn't think I could, so I kept having those conversations, I laughed it off, but they kept asking. And so it got to the point where I thought, well, what are my qualifications? Could I do that? And I had worked in the town planning department and enjoyed land use planning so much I was considering going back to college to get a master's degree in land use planning. I was working in the nonprofit field and had met a lot of great, passionate people. I had just recently formed a new nonprofit myself called Womentum. With a couple of other really extraordinary young women. And I was in actually the pilot Womentoring program at the time in early 2006 when I was having these conversations. Also, really critically, I had just had the opportunity to buy a home from the Jackson Hole Community Housing Trust. And housing was absolutely my #1 issue because when I looked at that gang of 10, I didn't see anyone who understood the struggles that we were facing and that so many people, too many people in our community, continue to face in this housing market. And I felt so grateful for the opportunity that I had been given to be able to buy a home from the Jackson Hole Community Housing Trust that I really wanted to pay that forward for other people. And so it was actually at the Womentoring Harvest, so those of you who are Womentoring alumni will know that we harvest in the spring, that I said to a group of people for the first time that I was going to run for town council. And I can't remember what the activity was, but there was some drawing involved, and I sort of sketched something out that looks a little bit like this. And that became the campaign logo. So I also really critically, I know I'm just about out of time, but I do want to add that one other piece was that once I decided that maybe I was qualified and I could give this thing a try, I still had no idea how to run a campaign. And so I'm super grateful that I took the opportunity to attend a Go Run training provided by the White House Project. And I went to that training, honestly, drove myself down to Boulder, Colorado, thinking like, maybe I'm not really gonna run, trying to talk myself out of it, quite honestly. And just thinking, nobody really knows who I am, I could just pull out of this race right now and no one would miss me. And I came back from that training knowing that not only was I gonna run, I was gonna win.
So great, hearing your stories already, I feel a kinship and some common themes. I am newly appointed to the town's council, and I did not run a campaign. I was this fall, while campaign season was going on, I was covering the campaign locally for the radio station, a la StoryCorps, this national storytelling organization that I have been producing an audio series for. It's called One Small Step. The idea is to bring people together for one-on-one conversations from opposite sides of the aisle, and for them to have a facilitated conversation with questions that I provide to get them to talk about the life experiences that have helped shape their beliefs. They're not allowed to debate one another, they're there to connect. And so I was pursuing all of the people who were running for office and asking them if they would participate and have a one small step conversation with a potential voter. And so I was paying attention to the primaries, and it dawned on me that if the sitting council member was running for mayor won, there would be a vacancy. And so I started asking everyone that I knew, who I think is a really strong leader in this community, would you run? You should run. You should totally do this. It's such a unique opportunity. Think about it, you won't even have to run a campaign, like that's the painful part. And basically everyone said no to me. So I felt like I had to kind of put my money where my mouth was, and here we are. But if you had asked me a few months ago, like, what are you up to? I would have said, I'm like on the verge of a midlife crisis. I have no idea what to do. But I too was able to buy a housing trust home a little over a year ago, and I feel like the community bestowed such an investment in me that I needed to show up and give back to the community. And this is one way to level up to do that. So here we go.
My name is Sue Muncaster. I am on the Baker City Council, which is the first all-women city council in Idaho. And thinking about, we were provided this question in advance, and when I think about it, basically middle school, high school, I always ran for something, but I never ran for the big job. I never ran for president. I think maybe I was like vice president once, but I was always the secretary or the treasurer. And then I would say another moment that directed me was, in high school you get like the prettiest, the most likely to succeed. I was chosen, I didn't know this till the yearbook came out, the most liberated. And at the time, I really was like, what does that mean? And I took a picture next to my enemy, who became a very good friend in the end, was Craig Patterson, who was the most chauvinistic. So he was the most chauvinistic, I was the most liberated. This is 1981. So that idea of liberated got, I think, stuck in the back of my head. I went to college, I took a year off, ended up in Vail, Colorado for 17 years as a ski bum and ski patroller and raft guide. And my first real moment when I really loved something and I decided to do something about it is I was the recreation chair for the Eagle County watershed management plan, and at the time it was one of the first ones in the nation where they brought together all these different representatives from the government, the land managers, the recreation community, the community at large, and basically did like kind of what they did here, a destination management plan, but it was based on watershed. So that was my first time I really met a single elected official and learned how government worked, etc. And then fast forward, I guess I ended up in Jackson, and as a young mother is really when I became more of an activist, and I was the founder of the Slow Food in the Tetons. That was I was writing a cookbook, and I came across Slow Food USA and started reading about what they did. And so this was probably 2000, and I was like, oh yeah, this speaks to me. This is what I want to do. And so I did that, and then the next thing that happened is we had a book banning, or an attempted book banning in Teton Valley, and my kid was like 6 or something. And I was so infuriated that a handful of mothers, mostly, we call ourselves parents lobbying for educational excellence or something like that, advancement. We started this grassroots group. We rallied the public. We filled the high school auditorium with people who stood up against this and sort of shut that down. And then I ran for county commissioner over in Idaho and lost the year that Mitt Romney ran against President Obama, which was probably not the right time to run as a Democrat in Teton Valley. And I was kind of shattered, but then in the 8 years between that and when I ran for city council, I learned a lot, and I was in Teton Valley. I had moved back over here, and then I moved back right after COVID, and the opportunity to run for the Victor City Council came up, much like Melissa, I think, said that somebody came to me and asked, would you run? And that's really empowering when your community's saying, would you run? But ultimately, I ran. All the things that I'm saying that I did were just something that I just really loved. And I love Teton Valley, and I think it's so special, and I think it has an opportunity to be everywhere USA. And so that's what keeps me on.
Okay, good evening. My name is Amy Torres-Renova, and after hearing the last 4 stories, I'm like, oh, I'm catching up too. I think just being very passionate about wanting to be part of my community or the things that are interesting to me is where it all started. But that leads to my children. They were the best at nominating me for activities or class parties. So I kind of like my kids, right? Like they, how many parties? Oh, my mom can do that. Like, we need so much green cookies. My mom can do that. And I'd be like, oh. And yeah, so a lot of my school group, any school group or athletic group that you can think of, I have probably been on. And currently still sit on a few of those, which is great. But my livelihood, I love to tell everyone that I grew up as the farmer's daughter, and then I became the rancher's wife. So we are passionate about agriculture and the Western way of life. That led me to hundreds of hours of volunteering for our local 4-H program and basically a lot of the platforms there, and then also volunteering for our local fair. And I think like many people here, being told you should run for fair board, you should run for fair board, and I'm not really interested in making decisions. I'm just here to help. And finally, I think just when it started affecting me personally, like some of the things that were happening that were affecting my 4-H kids or my rodeo kids or groups that I was involved in, I guess stemmed my if I really want to see a difference and contribute to the change, I have to be at the table that makes those changes. So I did. I submitted my application and didn't really think my name wasn't really a big name in the community, and I got appointed by our county commissioners, and I've been on the Teton County Fair Board for a couple of years. And I think because of the amazing exposure that just a simple board like the Fair Board does, it actually has opened my eyes and encouraged me to ambition for bigger seats. So last fall I did run for the Teton County School District, and it was an amazing experience, and I obviously didn't win, but it did not discourage me, and I'm feeling my fire, and I'll be back.
Hi, good evening. This is so fun. So I'm Natalie Hacker. when I first moved to Jackson in 2011, I was part of a program called Leadership Jackson Home. And we went to the legislature in February of 2012, and I looked down. It was the first time I ever visited the state legislature anywhere in the country, and there was a cowboy asleep with his feet on the desk and his hat down and the donut, and it was like, these people are making decisions for me. And made the mistake of complaining about it to some friends from college on the phone later. And one of them said, well, you can run for office. And I said, I don't know anything about that. And we'll notice that apparently it didn't occur to me whether or not I would be qualified. I had no issues thinking I should be there. It was just, I don't know how you get there. So I could do that. So they connected me with the campaign training program. And I love that we kind of share this part of our stories. We're going to get to some more illustrative in a second. But I went to a campaign training program in DC over the course of 6 months to learn all the things that you can learn, because my holdup was I don't know how you do that part of the thing. And ran for the state house in 2014 in a district that I was by the numbers surely going to lose. I did lose, but did better than I think all of us, probably myself included, thought that I would in terms of the number of votes I got based off of political party registration. And so was gearing up to go again and run for that again, and voluntarily decided to resign from the county commission. And many people called and suggested that I put in for that seat, and so I did, and was appointed to that seat. Thank you, Marco. One of the people that helped me. And ended up exactly where I was supposed to be. I really love local government, and think I'm grateful that that's where I landed, and have run for re-election now 3 times, and really appreciate community like this. When I became a county commissioner, between the town and the county and the 10 of us on those 2 boards, we were evenly split, male and female, and that was really cool, and cool to be a part of. And I think part of that, if you can see it, you can believe you can do it. When I ran in 2014, I gave birth to my son and then filed to run for office 6 days later. And so it was a very, I think I probably didn't know what I was getting into, because if I had known what it was like to be a parent and to run for office, maybe you would not have encouraged them, but again, just don't think too hard about it, and sign paperwork and then you'll be fine. And people will help you, and I think that happened time and again. People will show up to help, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the 2 people, my 2 friends from college, that convinced me to run for office, they wrote my first campaign checks, and they maxed out, and every time I run, they write my first campaign checks. So if you tell someone to run for office, also send money. And they do not live here, but they are fans and supporters, and it kind of takes people out there supporting you, and encouraging you, and just telling you can do it, and don't think too hard about it.
Okay, amazing. I love hearing all of your stories. I've heard most of them, but still learned things, so thank you. So as we go through the questions, I will direct it to certain panelists, but everyone, please do feel free to chime in if you'd like to add anything. This first question I'll direct towards Natalia, and it'll probably follow up on some of the things you just touched on. But what systemic barriers, both historical and present, make it more difficult for women to run for and serve in political office? How do structures like our citizen legislature model limit representation? And what changes could make leadership more accessible to a broader range of voices?
Thank you. I'm really excited to be having this conversation with Womentum. Love what Womentum does and the Womentum mission, but part of what this question is getting at is that there are systemic issues holding women back, and that even women with many resources, like I had with education, qualifications, all of that, still face hurdles, and that the more we can break this down, the better it gets, and the more that we can talk about them collectively to invite other people to help us break them down. So a few of them that I think are probably easily common knowledge, pay. So it depends on which level of government, how much you get paid, and you get health insurance, but those are real issues, particularly for younger folks and for women, the responsibilities, and at the moment you are in your life, can't afford to volunteer that amount of time. I would also say childcare, and that is whether it's childcare so that you can serve the legislature, childcare so that you can be in work here locally if you're in local government, and the cost of it, which is tied again to how much you're paid if that's what you're doing for full or part-time work. The wage gap. So even if you do have a job, if you're in a job that's not paid the same, or you over time have faced that, the wage gap impacts all of us, no matter where we are. And accommodations. So maybe some of you have seen the fun news about the representative from Colorado who sadly had to 3-4 weeks after having her baby go to Congress to vote because they wouldn't let her vote remotely, even though they voted remotely during the pandemic. And those kind of really fun moments to be like, yes, she's doing it, but like also why? Why does she have to do that? Like, could we not do that? And not everybody can do that or wants to do it. And so I think our group effort, also building allies, since the majority of our elected representatives in Wyoming still are men, is telling those stories and recruiting men to help us tell that story, and also for them to stay home with their newborn baby too. And how we set the standard that the expectation isn't that you're going to go back to Congress 4 weeks later to pass your vote, and that we shouldn't have those unrealistic expectations. I also think that right now in particular, and I would say over the almost 10 years that I've been serving, the cultural change in how we treat our elected officials and the dehumanization that is occurring across all of our society is very alienating, especially for women, to want to enter into that space. And so I challenge all of us together to stand up to that and to fight it. It's okay for us to have different policy ideas. It's not okay to call each other stupid because we think something different than someone else. And I think we cannot tolerate it in any level of our life because it is spilling into public spaces and it's making it have the people that want to get into good collaborative conversations and make decisions together stay away. And I think it makes the job of convincing someone to run for office really hard because you're asking them to step into what can be a scary situation, both in the running for office and in the serving, like no one wants to be treated that way. So I think we can all, whether you're in office or not in office, stand up to it when we see it. And don't accept it, invite the ideas, invite the debate, but it does not have to get personal, and we don't have to attack each other in order to share our ideas. The other thing, that probably our legislature is going, I think, the wrong direction in, but ranked choice voting. If you don't know what this is, please research it. There's so much great information out there that when ranked choice voting is deployed, more women are elected. And I am a believer that we need women running of all political spectrum, across the political spectrum, and how great would it be to have a ballot that was all women. And women should be free to have all the political ideas they want to have and not have to describe to a particular ideology. I'm going to vote for candidates that have policy ideas that I support, but how cool if all of them were women. So having, looking at our voting system, how we vote, the ways in which we invite people to become on the ballot can directly influence how many women we have serving in public office.
Excellent answer and suggestions. We'll move on to the next question. This is for Melissa and Amy, being maybe at different ends of the spectrum in their elected lives. But what internal barriers, such as self-doubt or fear of criticism, might hold women back from running for office? And how can we reframe these challenges to encourage more women to step forward? More specifically, might language, like politician versus public servant, shape the way women perceive their own leadership potential?
Sure. Yeah, this one, and I'm going to immediately just jump to remedial language. I grew up in a very traditional Mexican home where my parents were immigrants to the United States. And so growing up,
when they would discuss and we would listen about politics from their homeland, it was very negative. Usually a negative comment was attached to the word politician or politics. And so it, from a young age, it was, almost thought of a politician is corrupt or dishonest, and there's no way that I want my name attached to that, right? So even just with this Womentum thing and seeing like women in politics, it really inspired me because immediately it was like flashbacks to, politicians are not honest people. Politicians typically have a negative name that comes with them, and that's not me. Like, I don't want people to think of Amy as a bad politician. And so I like the terminology of public servants, right? And I'm at a lower level of politics, I guess. So I have a fun public servant. I get to plan the biggest party for a county each year. So I'm like, no, don't attach me to the word politician. I'm a public servant. Yeah, and I also do believe, and I always like to, if I can prepare myself, I always make little notes to jot my memory, so I'm constantly going to be looking down. But I think another internal barrier is understanding that not everyone has the financial freedom, and I think Leah kind of touched on it, to run for office or board or even just to volunteer. And I think that's very true here in Jackson. And especially in the community that I'm extremely attached to, the Latino community. It's not uncommon for Latinos to work multiple jobs in one day. And so even though they might have the passion or desire to put themselves out there, they're stuck with that hard choice of, do I do what I'm passionate about and I want to volunteer and sit on a board or maybe run for office? Or am I stuck with the responsibilities of life, of feeding my children, of taking care of, my home? Which I think, that's a barrier that resonates with me just because of the involvement with my Latino community. So,
I'll just add a little bit. I do think politician can be a dirty word in a lot of cultures. And I also think there's a great opportunity for people to understand that many politicians, I won't speak for all of them, but many really are motivated by public service. We're motivated because we want to make our community better. We're running because we care about our kids. We're running because we care about our neighbors. And so I think, again, to Natalie's point, we can all remember that whether we're candidates or serving in office, or whether we're talking to someone who is, or talking to our neighbors about our elected leaders, that they are people too, and most of them are doing what they think is best for their community because they want to make things better. I would agree that the financial barrier is real, and I think that that's something that we would be well served to talk about, especially at our state legislature. I like to call it the myth of the citizen legislature. It's really the old white man legislature for the most part, because that's who can afford to serve. Because our legislators in Wyoming get paid less than the Jackson Town Council, and they don't get health insurance. So for someone who's actually trying to make a living, it's really, really hard. I'm not going to say it's impossible because some people are doing it, and I absolutely applaud their efforts. And then family absolutely is a challenge. I've said many times I feel really fortunate that I started my family while I was in office, because I think if I had been sitting on the sidelines looking at it and thinking about it when I had an infant, someone in LA, she piles around with this infant, like, oh sure, I can do mine. No big deal, I got this. And so I was just kind of similarly forced, I had this infant and I had to figure out, and I would bring him to meetings, and when he got older, he would sit under the dais and no one could see him, and he'd be down there coloring, and that was the way he was raised. But I think, we do need to figure out how to really celebrate parenting and caretaking, whether it's our children or our parents or our spouses or, what's going on. To make that not, that's not your side gig, right? Your family is what you got, and you want to serve to make your community better. But let's find a way for our public servants to be able to serve our community and also be part of their own families.
I was just that, yes, I had all three of my kids while in elected office, and if I had had them first and then decided to run, I don't know. But as you add things, you are able to handle it, I guess. I will direct the next one first to Sue, and then Amy, be thinking about your answer too. How do you stay informed on local and global events without becoming overwhelmed or consumed by the constant flow of news? As leaders balancing public service, family, and personal well-being, what strategies have you found to set boundaries and protect your mental health while remaining engaged?
Good question. I'm so honored to be up here. All you ladies are amazing. So I do have a couple of things that I stick with pretty religiously, and one is, so I started doing this before COVID, and I had some success getting my family to do it, but I am pretty militant about it, is I do tech-free Sundays. I do not touch a computer on a Sunday, or at least one day a week. And I find that by Monday morning I'm refreshed and energized, and then by the end of the week I can really feel not so much my mental health, because I'm fortunate that it's not a huge struggle for me, but maybe I'll tell you what else I do, but that's why, but just my capacity for even thinking and putting together thoughts. I'm a writer, I write all day long, basically, and the marketing and communication, so, it's a lot of time on the computer, there's just so many distractions, and I have to say that I'm failing a little bit in the last few weeks, but I go outside every single day. I do something outside all the time. I'm also fanatic about that. As far as where I'm getting my news sources, I have really become a fan of Substack. I know about it because I started writing on Substack 3 years ago maybe. But now there's so many journalists who have left the New York Times, all of the big publications, and Substack, if you don't know about it, or if you do but you don't understand what it is it works, I call it a combination between blogging and Facebook or something, but where anybody can write on it and people subscribe to read what you write, and anybody can read what you write, but, people do it differently, but there is no advertising, zero, nada, none. And so there's not the algorithms pushed by all the advertisers. And then there's a lot of, Robert Rank is my favorite right now, a New York Times opinion person who has served in many, many political organizations. And he is able to say what he really wants to say. So I like that. We had a conversation about social media, and a lot of us are just like getting off of social media, and I really do feel like it's an obligation to try to help make social media better, more positive, etc. So I do, whenever I am on social media, I think one thing is making the world better before I post something, and I basically don't get in shouting matches. There's a particularly amazingly toxic community page over in Teton Valley, which is shocking, and it draws out the very worst in people. It's just awful. So that's how I'm dealing with it right now.
Amy, did you want to add anything to that? Don't know.
No, I just add that, me too. My top priority is my family, and so we have also established at home, our boundaries, and we're very careful of not allowing social media or electronics to come within our set boundaries, just because I do think that it's important. My family is my core, and they keep me kind of humbled, and they keep me down to earth. They're my hardest critics as well. And yeah, so we do similar things like what Sue was saying. We no electronics during dinner, and we typically Sundays are also our days. We try to come together with family to make dinner and just things like that. And then I'm really good at self-gauging myself and realizing when I'm going down the wrong path, and so it's like my inner gut's like trying to tell me like, oh, maybe let's stop there, right? Yeah, just listening to myself and realigning when I know I'm getting off track. But sometimes when I do try to get news sources, it's typically through like the New York Times, just like listening to a quick 30-minute podcast, and then locally I feel like that's pretty good. I work with a bunch of men that love to tell me what's going on. And that's it, which is great. I love it, and I'm like, oh, I have no idea. And yeah. Thank you.
Well, and I'll just add on this one that whether you're in a leadership position or not, I think that this is something all of us are struggling with right now, that balance of being informed, but not to the detriment of being able to act. I was listening to a podcast with Tori Dunlap, and if anyone's heard of her, she's a financial expert, and her motto is fighting patriarchy by making women rich. So that's a good thing. And she was very involved in the election, and she basically right after the election happened, a few podcasts, she shared that I can't do that for the next 4 years. I can't be consuming every news source. I can't be reading all the blogs. I can't be doing that because I found that it was so draining that I couldn't show up for my community. I couldn't show up for myself. I couldn't show up to do the things that I'm passionate about that I know can make a difference. And I keep thinking back on that because I think that's what I have to think about every day. I'm like, do I listen to the Daily from the New York Times this morning, or do I listen to something that's maybe a little bit lighter, and then I can show up better for the town or for my family? That's really helped me in the last few months. So I hope that if anything, you can think about it in that sense, that you don't have to be informed so much that you're paralyzed. Okay, next question. I'll direct towards Natalia and then Allison if you want to chime in after. How has mentorship in any form shaped your journey, whether through formal mentors, peer support, or trusted allies? Have you found unexpected ways to give or receive guidance? And what advice would you offer to those seeking meaningful support?
Thank you. So I think I have discovered when thinking about mentorship that I have not yet participated in any kind of formal mentoring situation, but have ended up having informal relationships with a wide variety of people. And so I think some takeaways that I would offer are that you might need different people for different things. And so never underestimate the power of a really, really, really good group ladies text chain to process something or back you up when you're having a good day, or allow you to vent. In the political space for me and in the other work that I do in theater, in a job that is generally in other geographies also very male-dominated and producing, have embraced having male mentors and talking to people about it. And I don't know that the people that I consider to be my male mentors even know that I think that they are not, but have had to just kind of get comfortable because they were people that had had the positions before and that I could gain knowledge from, but over time also became champions for me and supporters of mine. And so as we populate the political sphere with more and more women, there will be more women who can serve in that way. But we encourage whatever you're pursuing, if it's politics or something else, that there may be to open yourself up to that idea. At the same time, as you look around and to people coming up, making sure that we're building the networks and the power for women to mentor other women and let go of any kind of scarcity mindset of, I'm the only woman in the room and it needs to stay that way, which I think I have encountered with other women in certain spaces, that there's only room for one and that seat's already taken, so we have to let that go. And invite more in. I participated in a group called the Capital Run Fund, that for one election cycle, we were from all different political parties and were encouraging and supporting women running for office. And it was kind of an experiment in trying to build these bridges of women supporting other women and then looking down like what can we do to help the next generation of women coming up so that they don't have to face that hurdle of just, oh, I want to go, I'm going to be more comfortable with someone who's had some of the same experiences that I have had. So I think all of us who have reached certain places, creating and intentionally building the opportunities for mentorship. And the other thing that's taken me a really long time to learn, and I'm not sure I fully learned it, is when people give you advice, take what's useful and let go of what is not. I spent a lot of time like fretting over bad advice that just didn't apply to me, that I felt like I needed to make apply. And that lesson I continue to learn as a recovering perfectionist, that sometimes people tell you stuff and they're just wrong, and it's okay. You don't have to tell them that they're wrong, but you can just let it go. And that is hard, and I try to think about that when I give people advice of like, will this be useful to this person, and if not, maybe they don't need to hear it.
Allison, do you want to add anything?
Sure.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to this community because I'm currently a mentor and I feel so very supported by all of you here, including my mentee. When I was beating this idea around of running, I was amazed by how many people within the Womentum community said, yeah, go for it. I got letters of support that were sent to the town council on my behalf. It was like very touching and such an honor to receive those. And I guess I would say that mentoring, I hope I continue to hear from you. So I'm your touch point on the council. If you feel like that's true, like reach out to me. I want not just the encouragement, but also like the reality check, whatever that is for you. So this mentoring relationship continues. I feel like I'm being mentored as a new council member by my colleagues on the council and those who have served before me. And I'm very much open to this learning experience.
Yes, and how grateful we are to have a formal mentoring Womentum. All right, now I'll direct this one towards Melissa. It can be easy to put people in positions of leadership on a pedestal and view them as other, someone fundamentally different from ourselves. This can create a sense of intimidation, making us hesitant to envision ourselves in similar leadership roles or even to reach out to them. How can we break down this barrier and encourage more women to see themselves as capable of stepping into these positions? Kristen's very eager to know the answer to this one.
We can share. I did have to write down a few notes for this one just to make sure that I get it right, because I think that, that's, I can't see you half the time. So the best way to not put people on a pedestal is to recognize that they're not, right? We're all human beings, so we have a lot more in common than we have differences. And I think the key to seeing more women in elected leadership is seeing more women in elected leadership. So here we are, we all know that Wyoming is the equality state, of course. We here in Wyoming elected the first female governor in the country in 1925, Nellie Taylor Ross. 5 years earlier, right here in the town of Jackson, we had an all-women town council. Since 1995, when Barbara Cuban was elected to represent Wyoming in Congress, I believe we consistently had a female Congress member from Wyoming out of the 3 that we get to send. But yet our state legislature continues to be in the bottom 10 in the nation. I was kind of impressed to see that we're up to 25% now. I know, that's sad. And then I did not check all of the numbers because it's harder to do for town council and county commission, but it's generally lower than legislature. I think it's safe to assume that that's still the case. So, I think that the key, again, is to take that step, take that leap into leadership, and whatever it looks like. Again, if you care about making your community better, if you care about making your kids' schools better, run for school board, run the PTA, run the Bronx Packers, do what it takes and get to know other people and learn from them and figure out what you like and figure out what you're rewarded by. And maybe you don't ever want to be in elected office, and that's just fine. I'm not here to say that everybody needs to do it, but maybe you actually do like running a campaign and you're going to run other people's campaigns. Maybe you do really like volunteering on a board or being part of a service club and you're going to join Rotary or the Elks Club. So, find what that is, find your network and amplify your leadership. And because research does show, I think it takes women like 20 times of being asked to run. I'm just going to ask every woman in the room here. Right? Maybe the first, maybe the 20th, maybe I'll push someone over the edge tonight. But please run, and don't think of it like, again, don't think it has to be for elected office or, that there's a rating system. It's like, what is it that's meaningful to you that you want to do to make a difference? But it's going to be that next step to just amplify the work that you're already doing.
I just wanted to share something that somebody else said that I heard last week. She was talking about collective action and that this is this time in history where collective action is so important, and that's what we're all here. And she just pointed out, which ties together the last couple of questions, the myth of exceptionalism, imperialism, and rugged individualism is what keeps us divided and keeps us not stepping forward because we think that you have to be some kind of a hero. Even Melissa talking about these women in the early days, it's still like this person up here, and that's really in the next evolution, I believe, is we gotta get rid of that myth of that exceptionalism and rugged individualism. So.
Thank you so much. I build on what Melissa was saying too. There's not a lot of people in Wyoming, and there are a lot of jobs in the government and on boards and places that we need you to sign up. And when we say that you can sign up and get them, I'm going to tell one of my stories. After I ran for the House and lost, I was looking for what can I do to grow my experience, build relationships, build my resume, whatever the things were. And I applied for some state boards. And it is a piece of paper or a PDF that you fill out on the governor's website. And I was looking at, there's many choices. And I was looking at one that had opening. I applied for one that was like an early childhood one, and I got told shoe in. Some other something I can't remember, and one that had a requirement for a political party split. So there are some boards and commissions still in the state that you can't have more than 60% of the members be part of the same political party. So I applied for the DEQ's Land Quality Advisory Board, which is the first step of reviewing mining rules, like coal mines, uranium mines, which we do not have here. That was the one I got put on, because they needed someone that was not of the same political party as the rest of the members of the board. So you just never know, and I'm still on that board. And someone else should be on it. So if you want to apply for that one, I'll write one under, you can take my spot. But there are, and it's been really interesting because you meet really interesting people and you get to learn. So as part of that board, I went to Campbell County the same week that I became county commissioner in Teton County, and met other county commissioners in a different part of the state who should be my mortal enemy, and in fact are not, and are still good friends to this day. And it will help you understand the context and help you build confidence, but also see people as just other people who care about what they're doing. So we will, through Womentum, help share how you can apply for these boards and put your will help you write letters and be in contact with people to get one of these assignments, and you just kind of understand and figure out, as Melissa said, like what you're excited by, and find a place and just get started.
Well, that's what happens too. There's an organization called She Should Run. So look that one up if you haven't seen it already. But one of their slogans is, if you care, you're qualified. And I think that that's really true in local government, state government, federal government. When I ran for town council, I was by no means an expert. A lot of people said, well, why haven't you been on the planning commission? Why haven't you done this board? Why haven't you done that board? I was like, I don't know. I care about Jackson, so I should be represented. So, but if you care, you're qualified, and I really stand by that. Okay, Allison. Beyond just language, how do you approach communication to bridge divides rather than deepen them? In what ways does your behavior, tone, and word choices either support or hinder your mission?
I mentioned in my introduction that I was working on a project through StoryCorps and KHOL to bring people from opposite sides of the aisle together for conversations. And I felt like I was particularly poised for that position because my entire life I've had these conversations. My family dinner table was a one small step conversation between parents who never saw eye to eye on anything. I think I was immaculately conceived. And my father and I continue to see things very differently. And yet I love him. He's my dad and he loves me. And so I try to approach people who think things differently than I do with curiosity. I ask questions. I go in with an open heart, I would say, and I think that translates into a mindset as well. But a way of being that lowers my tone of voice and keeps me calm. When I feel like the shakiness and excitement when somebody's saying something that's just inaccurate or not something I agree with, it angers me. I really try to think about, am I having this response because I want to convince them, or am I still seeking to understand? Do I still have that curious mindset? Because I've had plenty of conversations where I've let my feelings overrun and I've closed the door. That conversation has ended. And I will say there are times when conversations should end. So if you're feeling like you're being disrespected, I would name that feeling. I would put it out there and say it. Like, I feel disrespected when I hear you say that. And be specific. And then if the person who you just said that to doesn't shift in their tone and approach with you, then end the conversation. There's nothing productive that's going to come with that. I had the opportunity to go to Cheyenne last week and meet so many wonderful leaders down there and a few of my political anti-heroes as well. And I sought them out. People who I've read about in the news for years, who are pushing for legislation that I feel like it attacks the dignity of so many people who live in the state, and it's against what I think is the Wyoming way. I've heard it's to live and let live. And I needed to meet them. I needed to see them, read them, hear their voice. I needed to make eye contact with them. And I didn't need to say anything in particular to them. I just needed to humanize them. And that, I don't know, that's given me a lot to think about. I at least made a positive connection with those two anti-heroes that I think the door remains open if I ever want to talk to them again. And I hope I do. I have one of his numbers, and he has mine now, and I've refrained from texting in range.
And before I go to the next question, I'll remind folks that if you do have a question, we'll have an audience question time. You can text the Womentum number in the program. And I am receiving those, so that's why for a moment I wasn't, but I have the Wi-Fi now. So next up we'll go to Sue, and I think I'm excited to hear your answer, but if any of the other panelists want to answer this too, Sue told me she wants to hear from you. So, have you found a balance between finding common ground or pushing the envelope in your political career? And what is the role of both? How do you decide when to collaborate versus stand firm on an issue you deeply believe in? Can you share an example of a time you made concessions or even changed your mind on something you felt strongly about?
Thank you. I was the one who came up with this question, and then I struggled with it all week. But ultimately, Leah actually answered this question for me in the very beginning. I really do, in my heart, believe that we need to figure out how to work together, how to reduce divisiveness. And I think one thing that disappoints me is when I see women who lose their best feminine qualities when they go into a position of leadership, whether it's in a business or in politics or whatever. It's heartbreaking. So ultimately, I basically, just during the week, I say, I go back to my core values, and then I was like, wait, what are those again? So I wrote down a couple of things that I am going to do going forward, which I do, but I wrote it down. The first one is to check my righteousness. Just check, like when you're infuriated by something, just really, we've all heard how to think critically better, how to look at both sides of the story, how to see the good in people or assume good intention versus bad intention. So I believe in gentle action theory, which is kind of like a good martial arts analogy of all of these good things that we're doing are eventually going to move the needle. But I do think about when something comes up, I am not afraid to stand up for it. And in my city council meetings, I often check myself to make sure, and I was saying, I heard it from somebody else, and we do it in our council meetings now, is there anything else left in your back pocket? And because I am in a room full of women, it is easier to all of us speak our mind. So that's nice. So that's one thing, speaking your mind. So as far as decision making, I'm learning to really think of, am I making the decision that's best for the most people in my community versus maybe what might be the best for me or my neighbor or what I believe about a particular issue. Assume good intention. Does it make the world better? Be nice, have fun. Revolutions cannot be sustained if there's no joy. And put on your oxygen mask first. But then there are lines in the sand. For me, it's body autonomy, it's book banding, and it's wildlife. I wrote down 3 things that were the most important to me that I feel like I would fight for. Maybe I'll spare, I think there's a last question that I'll tell you. There's something around tell us about one of your successes or something. But the other thing I learned that I didn't know until I was elected, and they give you the 300-page manual of how you're supposed to behave, which is shocking when you look on the national stage. It's the City of Victor's one. But anyways, there is a principle that when a board, we'll just use the city council, when the board makes a decision, even if you voted against it, once that decision's made, you're obligated, if you're a good civil servant, to move forward with that decision and go on to the next thing, and go on to the next thing. So this having a tantrum, meeting after meeting after meeting about something that happened 4 months ago is tiresome, and it's, we're seeing what's happening on the national stage, how people are are behaving. So anyways, at least in our local politics and even in our families, I think that's one thing that we can all do better is once a decision's been made, we move forward with it and support the team.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else want to chime in on that one? I was going to add, and this is something Sue and I talked about while prepping some of these questions, is that it's something that I struggle with too. Like, do you double down on, some, like a specific item, or do you kind of work with the team to make progress over time? And for me, I was the type that I felt like moving something forward, even if it wasn't getting exactly what I wanted, was still better than not having it go at all. And then I think, and obviously that was my role as an elected official on town council and as mayor. I also think that there's a role for advocacy groups, and maybe that's something that you serve on, a board or something that you participate in, and that's where I saw those specific political actions were really great from advocacy groups, and they all have a role to play, because me as a council member would listen to those as well as local citizens, my fellow citizens, and that ultimately helped weigh my decision. And so I thought that was helpful for me to think about it in that sense.
Yeah, that's a huge consideration is if you do become an elected official, you cannot be the activist that you once were. So, you may be better serving on the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance or the, Planned Parenthood, whatever it is, that's a consideration. So, when you're elected, your world gets smaller. I don't know, so I regret some things that you have to think about.
Okay, as we move, we're going to take audience questions, and raise your hand if you do have a question, because not everyone has the number. It's okay. But first, as you're thinking of your question, before I start calling on you, can everyone who serves on a board or in an elected office raise their hands? If you aren't on board or in an elected office and want to talk to some of these folks, like, there you go, there are your examples. And so I think that that's really amazing that our audience in itself is so active, and that's something, a testament to us in Jackson, Teton County, Wyoming, and Idaho, and also Womentum. So I'm grateful for all of you being here tonight. So with that, if there are any questions, and you can pose it generally to the audience or to the panelists, or to a specific person. Kristen's going to walk around with the mic, so please don't be shy.
Yes, this is where we get to be engaged citizens, so we're going to talk this together tonight.
Recognizing August is the mayor of Dregs.
I'm curious for whether you're current elected or past. Have there been certain things that have made you feel, I do not want to be in this position anymore? What was a thing that you remember that's either happening now or in the past that may have swayed you not wanting to be in that position anymore?
A global pandemic.
That's what I'll add to the global pandemic. I have a new job now that I'm not mayor anymore, and one of my colleagues is 30, and not much younger than me, but he was saying about COVID that he was like, yeah, I didn't, I got to watch TV with my roommates, I got to hang out, and I turned to him and I said, I had 2 little kids, I was vice mayor, had just announced to be mayor, and had a business in the service industry, so I think we have different experiences. Yeah. I'll answer if anyone else is thinking about that. But for me, kind of what Natalie had touched on before is that the kind of the day in and day out of folks weighing or like dragging you down with their comments or just kind of putting you as an other in a bad way or like making you feel bad about your decisions when you're really just trying to serve the community. I don't think that made me not want to serve anymore, but I touch on that because that was something that, through my 12 years was really hard. And when I first got elected, everyone said, oh, you're gonna have really tough skin. And I didn't really know what that meant. And I still don't really. I mean, I get the gist of it, but I think rather than having tough skin, you just have to have the outlets to let it roll off. And that was really important to me, whether it was having your close confidants, Natalie was one of mine, still is, or having those outlets like going outside or, having the boundaries of not looking at your town council email after 6 p.m. Don't do that. And so, again, that didn't make me not want to run again. I felt really good about my 12 years, and it just was time for me to change over. But I think that that's something to be said, and to know that you're also not alone in those things. And so, finding those ways to deal with that is really important.
Okay, so I was thinking about tough skin or thick skin, because that's generally what I say when someone says, you should. Nope. I have a real fear of not being liked. So that's probably kept me out of public roles in the past. But I am wondering what being in an office, how it did change you, either personally or professionally. If you could speak about, did your skin get thicker? And did you recognize those happen?
Thank you for that excellent question, KJ Morris. You should run. Your check is in the mail. I do want to recognize, actually, we have the chairman of the county commission and the mayor here tonight, and we do have a recovering politician like myself in the back here, Andy Schwartz, from the state. Thank you for being here. I do think that the thick skin thing is hard. Like when I was thinking about running, something that was really scary to me was, okay, how am I going to handle it when they find all the skeletons in my closet? And then it was like, wait, they're not going to look in my closet. There are no skeletons. There's nothing to be afraid of. But I think the media still was a fear, like even today, when I talked to a reporter yesterday, and it was still nerve-wracking. So that can be hard, but so finding out how to prepare and be okay with what's printed and think about, the words that you're saying are public, whether you're in a public meeting or talking to a reporter or sometimes in the grocery store, you don't know. So, being mindful of that, being confident in your position so that when someone says, why did you vote for that, you're able to explain why you voted for that and you feel good about that. I think actually a benefit of being in an elected office is that you know that you were elected by that amount of people to do the things you said you were going to do. So if then in office you vote for the things you said you were going to do, it's really easy to say, well, these people elected me to do that thing, and you're not going to make everyone happy all the time, and that's okay. Like, I learned a really great lesson when I was running for office, and I was serving lunch at the senior center, as candidates do, and an older gentleman said to me, remember I was 29 when I ran my first campaign, many years ago, and he said, you don't even look old enough to vote. How can you be running for office? And I don't know what I actually said to him, but in my head I thought, well, that's okay, I don't need your vote. You know, like, I'm not going to convince you. And that's okay, I don't need to represent you. Because if there are enough other people who I represent and who agree with me, then I'll get elected and I'll do that work. So having that in my head was always, I mean, I feel like that really helped me have that thick skin. And then certainly self-care was always really important. And I don't know that I was as good to not look at my console even after 6 p.m. But finding that time, finding the time to get outside, and I think that's something that I carry forward that I'm really grateful for, is learning that self-care, knowing that as an introvert, it's super draining for me to go to a reception and talk to 100 people. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to prepare by going outside first and like getting some fresh air and clearing my head, and then I'm just going to be able to go home and crash, and I'm not going to go do something social after that reception.
And I'll just add to, what I did get better at is what Natalia touched on, is like hearing the criticisms and letting some of them go and taking others to heart and learning from it, but not having to focus on all
I mean, yes, sometimes you have to focus on them for like 20 minutes in a really good conversation with your girlfriend, and then you can let them go. But I think it also is, I will say this now, I don't think I was here in this place mentally in early years of service, but now looking back is that, are you going to make mistakes? For sure. Like, mistakes were made. And we did. And they will be made. And I think for all of us as members of a democracy, that we can help ourselves by embracing that you might elect someone who takes the position and then learns something while they're there, and their position changes or evolves, instead of someone who makes a promise or a pledge, or takes a very hardline ideological stance and refuses to learn anything once they're there, and then votes the way they said they were going to vote to catastrophic results. And I think we're going to experience some of that in our state in the coming years, and so we're going to have to get through that together. But I don't know if you can or can't get thick skin, but you do, I guess I will say, to my kind of flippant comment about the pandemic, after you go through some like really hard times, afterwards you're like, I went through some really hard times and I'm still here. And that can, if you can remind yourself when you're feeling attacked or inadequate or like you made a mistake, that time will help and that you have done hard things. And that the post that I have from a Dorothy leadership class I took that's on my computer is challenge is the crucible of greatness. So pursue your greatness with challenges.
I think there's one more question.
So in leadership, we sometimes encounter people who are confrontational, misinformed, or even downright aggressive. What strategies do you use to defuse tension, correct misinformation, and assert yourself without escalating the situation?
Great question.
I ignore them.
I want to hear Allison answer this because I got to witness her speaking to her Any Heroes, and she's rad. I also am a big fan in tough conversations, especially if they're in a public setting, of taking a break and giving everybody a chance. And sometimes you have to say, like, this is heated, let's take a break. I also like to, when someone is getting volatile with me, I picture them as a 5-year-old. And like, so they're like a person, they were a child once, and inside there somewhere is that child. But I think taking a break, also because I know that for me, if someone is coming at me like that, my mind kind of evacuates. And I can't, like, later, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all these really smart things I can step back to that person. But in the moment, I'm like, this is unsafe or dangerous, or I'm not interested in this interaction. And so a break to either collect my thoughts or for them to realize maybe it's not, maybe the stakes aren't quite as high as they thought they were, or you lesson release them and make someone kick them out.
Yeah, I think you gotta trust your gut there. If you're feeling unsafe, name it and end it. I am not a fan of putting up with a bunch of bullshit. I'm not a fan of being disrespected, and in the conversations that I have with two people that I feel like run policies that are so disrespectful, I even, like our conversation was civil. I guess I would say I too pictured like the teenage boy version of the person I was talking to, who I can only imagine has just been like cast away, and has turned him into something that seems to like just hate women. And I wanted to be one of the women that maybe he encountered that like didn't hate him, right? That didn't cast him away. I also listened and took note of the things that he wasn't saying, and that's informative. I don't know. I don't know if that helps, but like definitely end it. Walk away if you're being disrespected.
I also think this is something I'm curious about pursuing for myself, and all of us is, we could all probably benefit from like lower level mediation facilitation training to learn how to have productive conversations. It's come to me, some of those have come to me more as I've taken like parenting classes. My parenting coach said, if you get it right 70% of the time, you're doing great. So like, if you get it right 70% of the time, you're doing great. But I think that is not something in our society and maybe in our school and our education system that we don't emphasize as much, and we emphasize a lot more digital learning and digital interactions. And part of what I love about public service is we do our work like sitting and talking to each other. We don't do it alone as a keyboard warrior, but like talking to each other, and the more you do it, the more practice you get. But maybe that's something we could think about Womentum of like how we build those conversation skills to connect with each other and to de-escalate, because I think we're all going to need it.
See Kristen going somewhere. Oh, going around. Okay, I want to be, I think we're getting close to time. So I'll take one more audience question, and then we are going to wrap it up.
First of all, thank you all for showing up and working in public service. I think just hearing you all talk and share your stories is really inspiring. I also want to recognize that being a public servant is really difficult work. And so I'm just curious about what lights your guys' fire, and what are some really rewarding experiences that keep you coming and showing up every single day?
That was a perfect question, because that was like our wrap-up question. So we'll use that as our wrap-up question. Natalia, you want to start?
I love what I get to do because we get to do a lot of different things. So literally no 2 days of my life are the same. And not everyone is made for that, but I am. So I found a happy place. And so that curiosity and being around people really keeps me going. Part of what our closing question was the stuff that you've gotten done that you love. And so I have a few of those that I try to hold dear, small ones. There's diaper changing tables in the county admin building now. And there's free menstrual products in the county admin building. There's a little bridge over in Alta that was really important to me, that was like very much advocated for by citizens over there, that as part of the commission I got to be part of getting done. And small things like that, when I'm over there and drive on it, I'm like, oh yeah, let me make this bridge. When you go to the rec center, Haley and I talked about this after we did the road cutting at the rec center. I was on the Parks and Rec board before I was a county commissioner, and still when I walk in there and there's people everywhere, I start crying. And it is like, the community did that, like you guys did that, you voted for it, and we built it, and we did it, and it's an amazing place to be, and something our community needed for so many years. Lenore Wallace is here, who's also on the Parks and Rec board, and a big part of that, so thank you, Lenore. And then if you think you were at any of us making a difference in kids' lives, when I got to speak to some fourth graders last year about government and what the county commissioner is, and they wrote thank you notes. One of them wrote me a thank you note that said thank you for the girl. And that was one of the first housing projects, maybe the first housing project I got to go for. And hearing that, it was like, all of it's worth it, all of the yes, all of it's worth it, that child is place to live, and we get to be there and the community did it, so the highs are so high that they kind of can zero out some of those.
And then I'm like, how do I follow that? Before I answer that, I do want to make a confession. My biggest girl crush in this county is actually Natalia.
She's mad at the county commission because she didn't like it. So she decided to do it.
Yeah, so I'm on the fair board, and we were given the task that we needed to prepare our budget to present to the county commissioners to see if it would get approved. And we diligently had like a 4-hour meeting, and we put our heads together and we tried to make cuts and realized like, no, we really need this to be fair. And I was so sad that I'm like, we're not bringing 3 acts, but okay, we're saving money. And it came to the day that we had to go present to county commissioners, and we were sitting there. I don't think Natalia was present, but as we were trying to present our budget, every single commissioner that was on the board just was not interested, and some were just like looking away, and I'm thinking like, really, we poured our heart into this budget for 4+ hours, you guys don't even care. And I sat there and being passionate about the fair and agriculture, I was like, if I want things to change, and if I want to show respect to all the, like, you guys appointed me to be on this board, and now you're not even giving me the time of day, like, no. So that's where it started, and then I think it is really important that we acknowledge that every single one that is sitting up here, they are humans, right? And I had made the comment to Elizabeth, and I had mentioned to her that my long-term goal was that I want to run for county commissioner. And she actually got me in contact with Natalia, and I was like, this isn't happening now. Natalia is like the, and she's human, and she immediately like responded back and was interested, and she wanted to talk to me, and she encouraged me and gave me a lot of great tips and pointers for when I'm ready to start campaigning and doing all that fun stuff. So keep that in mind, like they are human, and I guarantee you, if you reach out to any of them, they will 100% want to help, right? I think we've heard it like, sign up for something, like a very good place where you could start would be volunteering at the fair, and everyone likes it. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to answer the question that was originally given to us, just because I don't have all of that background and all of the experience of like being a politician. So I think something, and I don't, do you want to read the question, or should I just go right into it?
Yeah, no, go into it.
Okay. So, as many of you know, I ran for the local school board back in November, and that was something that I'm extremely proud of. Like, I put myself out there. And I focused my really small campaign. I didn't campaign very aggressively just because, this is our, I'm passionate. I still have kids in the school system, and I do feel that I don't want people giving me money because I didn't want to give them the understanding like what you think is right for the school because you gave me $50. I'm gonna go for that too. So it was a super small campaign, but I was targeting the Latino community, and I later was really criticized and for targeting what is considered a low or a non-voting community, and I was told that is what cost me my seat. And of course, in fact, I did not win, but I think I did very well. But I actually took that as a big win on a bigger level. I know that I brought awareness to a community that is now paying attention, and they're now using their voices, and I hope that they now are going to be using their votes. So, and most importantly, I hope that what I brought to life was seeing more last names like mine, like Flores and Garcia and Perez and Leon, on ballots that are coming, official ballots like the the moment that I actually saw my name on official ballot that said Amy Renova, oh my gosh, like secretly taking pictures of me. It is amazing. It is something that you need to be really proud of. And I honestly do hope that I'm encouraging or inspiring like young Latinas. Like if I can do it, you can do it too, right? There needs to be diversity.
And my thoughts on this question build on a little bit of what they both said, but one of my most, a real change in my leadership mentality came when, fun fact, I was Haley's high school volleyball coach. But this leadership lesson came probably 8 years into coaching volleyball. I'm coaching volleyball over at Teton High School. And it was just like so frustrating. We go into these tournaments and these kids were so good at practice and had so much potential and they had the skills. And then, they have this whole plan and then they go out on the court and they wouldn't execute. And so this one tournament, I just threw up my hands. I was like, you guys, you do what you want to do. You go in the locker room, you figure out what you're going to do. I'm going to sit on the sidelines and I'm here to support you, but you guys need to do what you want to do. Well, you all know what happened. They won the tournament because they got the heck out of their way, really. And they were no longer dependent on me, and they figured it out. And so I think that's, for me, where this leads is one of the things that brings me joy is standing in the middle of the People's Market or the Farm to Fork Festival, and at that point, I could be, nobody even knows who I am, and my daughter will be like, you did this, like you helped do this. And so I think, for me, I'm not, maybe this is more of a feminine quality of like, I don't want a plaque on the wall at the slow food business. Sue Moncaster started that, that's the last thing I want. So what's really rewarding is seeing change over time that other people are doing, that you're not doing it, that you maybe had a spark, and that's what I'm thinking about.
For me, I would say it is the really high highs. Get rid of all the low lows. If I'm thinking about specific projects that bring me joy, Snow King brings me a lot of joy. And in the 7 to 8 years that we did that planning process, it did not. It was hard. It was hard amongst our council. It was hard amongst the stakeholders. And it was hard for the community. And I'm sure a lot of you guys were there showing up and making your voices heard. But for me, that one, I had this vision of my dad and my son. Now, I'm the crappy. And my daughters, too, being able to ride the gondola to the top of Snow King and enjoy this piece of Jackson that they wouldn't otherwise get to enjoy because of their abilities or disabilities. And I think that now it's so much more accessible to people, and seeing my kids learn how to ski on Snow King and knowing that my council had a really big piece in making that happen makes me really joyful. And then I would say too, when I started council, pretty much our meetings were all about buildings and what they look like and, really, in my opinion, boring planning stuff. Sorry, Arn. But as we shifted over time, we now really, I think, focus more on the people. We still talk about buildings, but how are they going to affect the people? And I brought that in the sense of like, how am I going to walk down the street with a stroller and a toddler? And feeling really proud of bringing that voice to the council that otherwise hadn't been there, other than Melissa. So thanks, Melissa. So those things feel really good now.
I'm so very nervous and saying yes and showing up to everything.
they're gonna be tired of seeing me at town hall soon enough. But to think about something that I'm proud of within this community, and would go back to a film project that I worked on that started in 2018 and wrapped up in 2022. So I don't have children, but I treat those creative projects like my children. They're a part of me that then I share with the world, and whether you like it or not, I feel a lot of pride when people are responding to what they're seeing on screen, when they're feeling moved, every laugh or every sigh or every moment that the audience gives me. It's like a sense of satisfaction. And I think that project that brought me back to Jackson in 2018 was this Sister Cities docuseries between Jackson and Tlaxcala, Mexico, a community where so many people who live here have ancestral ties or emigrated themselves. And I'd like to say that those films started a trend that is continuing to carry on. The Center for the Arts had an awesome celebration last year of Tlaxcaltecan heritage that spanned a week, and they brought artists up from Hueyotlipan, Tlaxcala, some of them my students, some of my friends, and it was great to see them here being celebrated as artists, not laborers, being on the main stage, and their art being so appreciated by the over 500 people that were in attendance. The moment of the dancers on stage hearing from the audience, "Viva Mexico! Viva Tlaxcala! Viva Hueyo!" and the response being, "Viva!" I'm not a part of that community personally, that's my heritage, but that was a real moment of pride for me.
This moment right now, this is a pretty great moment. From sharing that story and deciding to run as we were launching Womentum, to be here tonight, to see all of you here, to see what Womentum has become, and how many people have come through the Womentoring program, and I hope that it has changed their lives in a positive way. I'll share one more full circle moment. Well, actually first, I just want to say I had the honor of being part of the Council and Commission that rewrote our comprehensive plan over 6 years that we approved in 2012, and that continues to be updated, and we put our goal in that plan of housing 65% of our workforce locally. And I didn't check the latest indicator report, but I know we're still really darn close. So I know housing is still too difficult for too many people in this community, but I really do believe that we made a difference by setting that goal and setting a work plan to make it happen. And I don't think our community would look the way that it does today if it hadn't done that. So really celebrate that, and we'll work together. And then I just want to share one more full circle moment, and Megan gave me permission to share it with the crowd tonight. So I recently transitioned professionally into a new role as the Director of Energy Conservation Works. And when I started, I was looking to reach out to Megan Jens, who is our program manager, and I searched in my email for her contact. I must have emailed her at some point, and this email came up from 2010, I think it was. She was in Girls Actively Participating at the middle school, and I was on the Jackson Town Council and on the board of Girls Actively Participating, and I was working with this really cool group of people that were, we were calling ourselves the Energy Efficiency Advisory Board, and we had set this goal to reduce Jackson and Teton County's energy use 10% by 2010. And Megan was writing to basically challenge us to do more, of course, telling us that we weren't going far enough with solar, and now I get the opportunity to work with her to advance the first community solar project in Wyoming. So that's pretty special.
I love those full circle moments. With that, I will pass it on to Kristen. Thank you for sharing extra time. If anyone knows me, I like timeliness, but thank you for sharing the extra time tonight. And we'll have Kristen wrap up. Thank you, ladies.
I appreciate you all being here. I just wanted to take one more moment to acknowledge all of our past and current elected officials who have joined us tonight. Will you just raise your hand again so we can thank you for your service? Okay, so that concludes our program. We are going to be following up with some resources to share, and I hope you had some really great takeaways. These are humans. They want to talk to you, they want to inspire you, so I hope you make some new friends and connections. And thank you for supporting your community and for Womentum. Have a great evening.